my topic today is about community-based disaster risk reduction and management. That includes the changing perspective in disaster management. So as we all know, disasters are becoming more frequent. As we observe, for example, in the Philippines, so it's becoming more frequent. Before, for example, we have only maybe once every 2 years or once every 5 years of huge disaster, but that's almost becoming annually. Okay, if we look at the statistics in the Philippines, for example, you would notice that we have almost 1,000 deaths every 2 years, and that's very, very huge. Okay, and then it's becoming more devastating. Just look at the what happened in Albay in 2006. In 2004, there was the Infanta flash flood, and then in 2009, you have the Metro Manila Undoy, and then after that, you have the Cagayan de Oro, then the Pablo last year, and now you have the Abagat. So the degree of damages is becoming becoming bigger, no, in terms of cost, in terms of damages, and at the same time destroying development nurtured for years. You just imagine a developing country like the Philippines investing a lot of money to our economy, to our infrastructure, to our society, and then by in 2 minutes or maybe in less than a half day, everything is gone. It's like us maybe investing in our own home. Investing in our own home, we secured loans to pay for our real estate property, for our, all those stuff, and then suddenly we were confronted by erosion, or maybe by landslide, or maybe by the flood, and suddenly our house is carried away by the flood, and everything is gone. Okay. In the Philippines, I'm sure also in developing countries, we value whatever assets that we have accumulated, not because we love material things, but because we have the sentimentality about what we have achieved. And also for us, it's a blessing from God. And it's somehow it's going to be a big loss for us to see God's blessing being carried away by the flood. And so, as I've said, in just few seconds, developments that were nurtured for decades can easily be gone. And there have been studies. There's a center, for example, that this is based in Brussels. They will make studies, although this is only from 1991 to 2000. But you can see here the distribution of people killed by natural disasters. And as you can see, countries with low human development has the greatest number of people dying. Okay, there's inequality in disaster. Okay. For example, even in Japan, in tsunami, a lot of people died. But if you go there, you would see that the kind of evacuation center that they have is very nice. If you are not a disaster victim in the Philippines, you would say, I hope I am a disaster victim in Japan. You know why? When we entered, when we saw the temporary shelter, it has an LCD television about this big. It has huge fridge there. It has heater. It has heater and cooler. It has washing machine. It has range. Everything. Yeah? It's about. It has 2 rooms. It has a sala, and that's an evacuation. That's a temporary shelter. Okay, and sadly, my pictures, my documentation of all this stuff became a victim of disaster because the memory card suddenly was, I don't know what happened, but when I put it in my laptop to download, then it's all all the pictures were gone, and I couldn't show it to you. But it was corrupted. The files were corrupted. But what I'm saying is that, developing countries, I also went to Louisiana in New Orleans, okay, and we saw, it was devastated by the flood. But when I went there, it was, you wouldn't see that the remnants of the flood, okay. So developing countries can easily cope with disasters, okay, despite the losses that they have. But developing countries will have difficulty in coping with it. So we have here the Human Development Index, and the Philippines Human Development Index is a measurement of development in terms of human achievement, in terms of longevity, in terms of productivity, in terms of capacity to produce. So they just use these measurements because accordingly, these are the 3 indicators in which will be able to get indicators from all countries. All other indicators would vary, but this one can be used as surrogate indicators for development. And if you get a 10, then that means that's very high. The Philippines is 0.64, okay? So we're yellow, yeah, yellow there. So more or less we belong to the middle, around 134, I think. 134, there are about 178 countries in the world today. And as you can see, the United States there is supposed to be, this is supposed to be dark green, but now it became brown because of projection. But it's supposed to be dark green together with Australia and some of those Europe. In fact, many European countries are in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, in terms of Human Development Index. I'm showing this because when we look at the World Risk Index, the Philippines ranked 3rd. Okay, so most of this is the risk index for climate change. So most of developing countries fall below or are down. Got a Human Development Index that are low. But when it comes to risk, oh, they're very high. Okay, so it's inverse. Parang it's not. It's not rational to have this kind of situation. And if you are poor and you are very at risk, you're very much at risk, then you are in danger, really, okay? And if you look at the map now, so this is now the Philippines red. Red means you are very, very at risk. So imagine us, Philippines, for example. I'm sorry, but I know there are many foreigners here. But many developing countries in Asia Pacific area, Timor-Leste and Indonesia, they're very, very vulnerable to climate change. Okay. So because of this assessment, we can see the paradigm changing paradigm with respect to disaster, to the concept and practice of disaster. Before, it was just emergency management, especially after the war. That's why a lot of organizations rose up after the war because of the need to rehabilitate countries because of the devastation. So and then it followed on up to 1960s and 70s up to the present. So you have emergency management, which is actually focused on managing the losses. However, towards the 1970s in the Philippine context, it was translated. I mean, there was a movement from emergency management to preparedness. The question is, why manage the losses only? Why not prepare? So, therefore, the concept of disaster preparedness emerged. In the 1977, 78, when the old presidential 1566, the old law that governs the Philippines disaster risk management structures, institutions, and practice, the paradigm was disaster preparedness. That's why, starting in 2008 to 2009, we advocated for the passage of a new law, which was passed in 2010, and we call it now disaster risk reduction and management, because we said, let's not just prepare. Anyway, I'll go to the concept later. So from disaster preparedness, because of it moved on into the concept of disaster management, which now includes the following aspects: the prevention, the mitigation, the preparedness, responding to the disaster, and then recovery from disaster. So this is now disaster management, which is now a cycle. It incorporated the first two, okay, the management or the response, as well as the preparedness. It became more holistic in a sense that all aspects are covered, but still focused on disaster. And then in 2005, there was this World Summit on Disaster Risk Reduction held in Kobe, and they formulated this Yoga Framework of Action from 2005 to 2015. That's a 10-year program, and this will end 2 years from now. Okay? And based on this framework, they said, we're not going to focus on the losses. We're going to focus on the risk. Okay? Now, this is a very different framework from the previous three. That the first three focus on the losses, which are actually impact or consequence of the hazard. But now the focus is on the risk, meaning before disaster take place, you focus on the risk. Okay? So you manage and reduce your risk. Okay? So if you know that you are vulnerable because you're living near the river, then you are not going to just do something about what will happen to you in case disaster comes, but you are to manage the risk, okay? From getting away from it to doing something about your assets, you know, protecting your properties, etc., etc. Okay, so it's risk management. Okay, disaster risk management is the present concept now, and this is being used in practice, in policies, in the academe. Okay, and this is also what we're promoting now. Okay, disaster management is considered as still management of the losses. Okay, but if you like to work on the risk, then it should be disaster risk management. So like I have here the disaster risk management cycle. So you have here during the mitigation and preparedness. We call this as the prevention phase. Okay, you prevent disaster by doing some by handling the risk to prevent the losses. Okay, and then you have when disaster happen, then you have the response, and then you have also you have the response, and then you have the rehabilitation, the control phase, and then you have reconstruction, recovery phase. Okay, so this is the cycle now in disaster risk management, but it's not just focused on managing the losses, but all the risks involved in all phases. Okay, in all phases. Even during the response, there are risks. So that the risk of the risk of health problem arising, the problem of social conflict can arise. Those are sub-consequences of disaster. These are not direct impact of disaster, but because of disaster, people would encounter health problem. They would problem congestion in evacuation center. It can result to social conflicts. It can result to infidelity, etc., etc. As some husband would come into other tents and then mistake another woman as their wife. It happened, okay? It happened. So, you know, all those things can happen, you know, the complexity of the impact of disasters that affect not just the physical, but the economic, the moral, the social, and all those consequences of disaster. So, because of this concept of disaster risk management, and because I belong to the Department of Community Development, and this is the conventional framework in CD, and that is developing people's capability through community education, through value formation, skills development, and conscientization. And that is to develop the capability of the people. The second is to ensure that they are part of the decision-making in terms of people's participation. And so you have here area-based organizing that can be done through organizing, through area-based organizing, through issue-based, and then to alliance and coalition building. I can leave this PowerPoint presentation to the Secretariat, and if you want, you can have it. Or maybe you can Google my name. Some of these articles are in the internet. And then the third aspect would be ensuring people's welfare and well-being through community resources and disaster risk management. That means developing the social enterprise, the community economics, and at the same time, the community environment. So all these three are the main elements or the main purpose of community development, and that is empowerment and transformation through capacity building, that's community education, ensuring participation or involvement through community organizing, and then ensuring the welfare and well-being of the people through community resources and disaster risk management. So this is now the framework from which the community-based disaster risk management is anchored on. So first, What is community-based disaster risk management? It is a more holistic disaster management framework or comprehensive disaster risk management. As I've said, it's not just concerned about the losses, it's concerned about the risk. All of us have risk. We might not be victim of disaster, but we all have risk. As you go home, as you get out of this hotel, there will be risk there. Right now, there's risk. What if there's a sudden earthquake and then suddenly those chandelier would fall into your head? What will you do? Okay, those are risks. Okay, I always speak. I just came from a whole day consultation with the DSWD because I was asked by them to do the risk and vulnerability assessment for social protection, and we conducted the national consultation. My voice is now harsh, and that's a risk, okay? Professors would always have that risk of having, speaking too much will cause your voice to become harsh, okay? There are risks. In all of us have risks. And as I was always telling everybody, be aware of your risks, from the personal to your home, to your workplaces, to the community, and to the society. In fact, in the DSWD, we have expanded the concept of disaster risk. Disaster is not just environmental and not just environmental related, but includes all kinds of risks. We have the individual life cycle risk, from pregnancy to old age. The moment you retire, you don't have money, you don't have pension, then you're going to suffer if you did not manage your risk. Okay? Then you have the economic risk. If we're not aware of our own economic situation, personally, as a family, and as a nation, then we might be at risk. I was asking by a participant in DSWD a while ago, what will you do if the war in Zamboanga is extended to Metro Manila? Oh, we're not ready. Oh, think about it. What is our option? We'll just pray. Okay. But you know, the point is, we must always be aware of the risk. Sabi nga, our only response is number one, go to ATM and get all our money, and then secondly, go to the groceries and buy all the food there. But that's not the proper management of such kind of risk. Okay, I don't have exact management strategy for possible war in Metro Manila involving some MIL people, because it's possible that there are also MILF members or MNLF members in Metro Manila, because the people there are relatives of the people here, and there are many Muslim communities. Okay, so watch out. Okay. Some of you, anyway. So there must be some more holistic response to disaster risk. Then it's concerned with the four basic phases, as I've said: prevention and mitigation, preparedness, emergency response, and disaster recovery. Then also it is concerned with integrated four other concerns, like the management and reduction of risk. As I've said, risk reduction. Secondly, protection of development gains. How do you protect your development gains? As a family, again, as a community, as a nation. And then maintaining or sustaining sustainable human development. And then finally, mainstreaming disaster risk reduction into development. So these are basic concerns that are actually should be integrated in risk reduction and should also be a concern of community-based disaster risk management. So what are some of the principles of this CBDRM? Okay, first of all, it is people in development oriented. Don't tell me, oh, it should be Jesus oriented. Okay, I assume that everything here as a Christian is Christ-centered, okay? So here, we're just saying now is that this is people development-oriented. So I'll not go into the details of this. It's comprehensive. It is participatory in its approach. And then it reduces possible losses in the lives, properties, community resources, and environment. And then it views disaster as a question of people's vulnerability. Hazards can take place in a locality, but it's possible that there's no loss. Okay? There are losses because of people's action. Okay? Maybe, river delta becoming subdivisions, like what happened in Cagayan de Oro, like what happened in Marikina. These are actually delta, and it should never be developed. But because of, politics and economic greed, they convert all possible lands into possible sources of income, and so it became a subdivision with the connivance of people in cities, in municipalities, planning, registry of deeds, etc. And people are easily, they get attracted easily with good places, sceneries and things like that, not knowing that it is a delta. When say delta, you have a river there, then it will accumulate some soil here, some land, then it becomes part of the land. The river will flow somewhere here, okay, and then sometimes there will be another island there. They put a bridge there, that land becomes a settlement, this one becomes a settlement. But in reality, all those areas are part of the river. So when the real water runoff current comes, then everything is covered, including houses and settlements. That's why now I live in the condo. I don't want to live in I live in the 15th floor. So I said, I will never get flooded here, okay? Earthquake naman. Well, if my children not living with me, and if I die, I'm sure my children will say, hallelujah. Not only because they know that I'm a Christian, but because I have a lot of insurance. And what the University of the Philippines was not able to do with me, my debt can do it. And that is to make my children millionaire. Okay. So, that's the goodness about managing your risk. Okay? So, even if I die now, I'm not afraid. I'll be happy because for me to live is Christ, to die is gain. Right? And those people who will be left behind will be happy. Why? Oh, suddenly, if I give them only 1,000 a week now, they're going to have millions. Of course, I have to pay for that. But that's part of risk management. Okay? So if you don't have yet, Filipinos, if you don't have life insurance yet, you approach me after. No, I'm not an underwriter. I'm not an underwriter, but I'm a rich, I would say I'm a rich specialist, so more or less, in terms of managing, I know what should be done. That's why I'm always happy. And even in times of death, I told my wife, give me 5 days only in the intensive care unit because I got insurance not to pay St. Luke's Hospital, but to be given to my children. And in the first place, I don't need all those tubes. Only to die after a month, and then by the time all your money are already exhausted. See, the point is this: I think every one of us should be ready for all possible risks. The problem with us Christians is we prepare only for our eternal life. That's not a problem, of course. But even before that, we should also be ready. Okay? So even in times of death, you're really singing hallelujah, di ba? Okay, so people become vulnerable because they don't have those capabilities, resources to make them to reduce the risk that they face. And then empowers people to address the roots of vulnerabilities, the root causes. I cannot go into the details now of the root causes, but in a framework which I just presented a while ago today, it includes global drivers. Suddenly you have financial problem in the U.S. and we get affected. Okay, suddenly there's a rise of oil in the Middle East, and then suddenly we're also affected. All those stuff, international events seems to be unrelated to our disaster situation, but they are. We are not unconnected. Okay? And then transforming structures that generate inequity in underdevelopment, even at the community level. There are usurious practices that makes the people, indebted. Okay? And there are a lot of relationship, like man and woman relationship at home, where it's very, very patriarchal, so everything, it should be the father who it should be the husband who should always decide. Okay? So anyway, there are those relationships can be causes of disaster. Okay? It encompasses the four major processes, namely disaster prevention and mitigation, disaster preparedness, emergency response, and post-emergency or disaster recovery. By the way, in 2015, 2 years from now, there's going to be an assessment of the Yogo framework for disaster risk reduction. It's going to be held again in Geneva. So there's going to be assessment again of what happened. Okay. The point is this: there are so many processes that need some inventory assessment of what happened. Okay, because as I look at the Yogo framework now, for example, the plan is very, very nice, very, very good. But in terms of accomplishments, the rating now is maybe in a scale of 1 to 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's about 3.3. Okay, just in the middle, 3.3. So that's the status. But in terms of accomplishment, many have been accomplished, but not that much to reach even 4 or 5. See? Much has been accomplished. Like in the Philippines, we have now a new paradigm, a new law. We have now in the LGUs, we have now Disaster Risk Reduction Management Office. There's greater awareness now. Everybody now speaking about disaster management, disaster risk reduction, and those are great accomplishments. But if we look around at the community level, you can see that a lot of communities are still at risk. Not just poor communities, but even the non-poor are also vulnerable to disasters. As I was saying, even if we are rich, we can become poor because of disaster. Okay? So CBDRM hopes to accomplish both long-term transformational changes, meaning reduction of vulnerabilities, improving their capacities, as well as short-term remedial improvements in the well-being of the people. So if you get hit by disaster, more or less, there will be some remedial response to you. And then it will reduce, okay, actually these are just repetition of what we have already: reduction of vulnerabilities, transformation of structures, public safety, and then empowered individuals and community institutions. According to John Twigg, okay, he wrote this characteristic of a disaster resilient community. Okay, what are the characteristics of disaster resilient community? Number one is the capacity to anticipate, minimize, absorb stress or destructive forces through adaptation or resistance. You can also ask this: what is the characteristic of a resilient person? We must have the capacity to anticipate, minimize, absorb stress or destructive forces. If by a certain stress you get stroke already, then you are not resilient. Okay? The capacity to manage or maintain certain basic functions or structures during disastrous events. Meaning, when you are now facing disaster, you know how to deal with it with smiles in your face. Hallelujah, there's disaster, something like that. So, we're able to sing hallelujah even in the face of disaster. Now, I'm just trying to make you laugh. But I think the idea here is this: don't panic in times of disaster. I think our faith will be tested during times of disaster. Okay? And then capacity to recover or bounce back. Actually, it's called bounce back better after an event. So once we are affected by disaster, then we must be able to recover. Okay? I think these principles are very Christian. If I'm going to I just don't know how to put biblical verses here because I'm not a theologian. But you can, as mga theologians, you can easily put verses there. I'd like to give you some. Anyway, these are some of the activities. These are just some of the activities in CBDRM. We have a community orientation and DRR. This is our student in San Mateo. We have partnered as the Buklod Tao, and it's one of the recipient of the award in the Philippines during the time of Undoy, a candidate rather for the event People of the Year, something like that. This is in in San Mateo, so our student conducting orientation about disaster risk reduction. Oh, that's me giving orientation about relief operation and things like that during the Undoy situation, Undoy flash flood. Also this one, capability building for disaster risk reduction. Here we do some participatory capacity in hazard assessment. We do it by games, you know. We play games, and through that, the people are able to prioritize the risk. And also, we this one is developing people's capacities for emergency response. If you can see the house there, this is around 9 o'clock in the morning, and then towards 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, the water reached the top of the house. It's almost 30 feet. Okay, so when we went back there, you know, there were a lot of plastics in the trees and in the electrical poles there. Nobody died, despite the fact that it was 30 feet. Nobody died. Why? Because the community was prepared. And that is exactly what would like to happen in many communities today. Because, you know, emergency response from the outside will come maybe after 30 minutes. What if their families were also affected by disaster? They will not come. So the best response, the community themselves, the people from the community themselves. Okay? So here, these are residents. These are the community leaders, and in which they do. They were trained to do rescue operation. In Banaba, for example, even the women are members of the search and rescue. Women, not just men. Okay. So we have hazard mapping. This is a training on hazard mapping. So we teach our community people, leaders, how to do hazard mapping manually. Okay. So these are just read, you know, simplified way of showing which areas can easily get flooded, things like that, because they're along the Marikina River. They have hazard assessment using satellite photos, okay, by men, of course, as well as women. Okay. We do suggest that we refrain from looking at women as always the secondary sex, as a minority people, or as people with lesser capability. We believe, I don't know your perspective, theological perspective here, but we in my university, we live in the equality of men and women. Even if you persecute me now, it's okay. So we have participatory planning. The people themselves are, you know, involved in hazard assessment, determining what should be done. Okay, they come up with contingency plan. Contingency plan is the plan in case there is disaster. That's different from disaster risk reduction in management plan. The disaster reduction in management plan is the overall plan long-term that aims to reduce risk of the community, in which contingency plan is a component. For example, if you have a community that is very vulnerable to flooding, okay, then you must be able to identify how many families are affected there. Okay, what do we do in case the flood comes, you know, 3 feet, 5 feet, 7 feet, etc.? Then it would include plans for rescue, plans for evacuation, you know, those things. It includes education, awareness. So it's more holistic, the disaster reduction management plan. Sad to say, many communities do not do that yet. What communities are doing now is disaster preparedness plan. You know, having drill what to do in times of disaster, that's fine. But all of those are part of the response. Actually, the challenge now is going beyond disaster management, but going into risk management. Okay? Then we also do advocacy work, and this is, for example, Oxfam. They have T-shirts as a mechanism for promoting preparedness in disaster. Of course, we have macho men. We cause them to dance so that more or less their macho perspective, say, yung pagka-machismo nila, and then sometimes this is so discriminating. So we give them the chance to become more or less, to soften their attitude. Okay, you dance. okay, and sing. And that is to break their attitude that they're always the person who should be, an authority, things like that. Also, we build organizations among the people. So these are some of the participants in our training. The purpose is to build strong, solid, and resilient community. So what are the strategies? We do participatory analysis in hazard mapping, vulnerability, and capacity assessment. If you notice, this is not just emergency. This is before a disaster happened, okay? We use participatory counter-disaster planning, as I have discussed a while ago. This is our plan in case of emergency. And then we integrate disaster management in comprehensive development in all levels. My dissertation was on integrating disaster management planning in comprehensive planning. But when I did my dissertation, there was no disaster risk management in the plans of municipalities and cities. Okay, so and the dissertation was in 2000, but now all plans now are being mandated to integrate disaster risk reduction and management. Okay, like in the 1980s, it was when was the environment? 80s or early 80s, no? Environment, integrate environment in all plans, fine. And then towards the 90s, integrate gender in all plans. Now, integrate disaster risk management. We're looking for the integration of spirituality in all plans. Okay, so that will be the next flavor of the season, okay? But, I hope it's not just be a flavor for a season, but forever. But as of now, there's no call yet. When say mainstreaming, that kind of call. But now, what is being called now is integrating disaster risk management and climate change adaptation in plans. Okay. And then community organizing as one of the strategies, one of the methods in CBDRM. You also have community mobilization and volunteerism. And then strategies still, capacity building, of course. And then implementation of disaster mitigation measures. Disaster mitigation measures means that you construct structural measures that would reduce risk. If you have to reproof building structures so that it will not collapse in times of earthquake, then you have to do it. So as you see, we are preventing possible disaster loss rather than waiting for it to happen and then we manage the loss. And then comprehensive sectoral integration of health, environment, infrastructure, educational, economic, and other services. And then you have intra collaboration and coordination among the community, the people's organization, NGOs, government agencies, and the private sector. So work in solidarity with other sectors. And then outcome, this is based on our study with the Philippine National Red Cross. I would say that the Philippine National Red Cross is one of the NGOs that started community-based approach, okay, to the ICDP, Integrated Community Development Planning Program. They use community-based approach, okay. So, what are some of the good outcomes? Of course, they were able to mitigate the effects of disaster. Malabo, no? Sorry. And then disaster action teams were formed. There were community residents who are involved in community activities. Local officials became supportive of the team in disaster prevention and management. There were budget allocated, LGUs budgeted some resources for these activities. And then community leaders are able to tap resources for the community projects. Community able to manage disaster situation in the community, such as search and rescue, relief operations, relief distribution, evacuation. Sorry. Yes, thank you. Then able to document disaster situation and response in the community. There were positive attitude of the people towards the NGO, which is the Philippine National Red Cross. Now there are also some problems. Okay, I'll let go. It's not good it's not good to read because of the color. But the main problems in CBDRM includes the training also of the staff, because not all people are equipped in CBDRM. Okay, even in community development. So of course there's a need for incorporating hazard awareness and the community disaster action plans. There's also danger if you look at the hazards in a very micro level. For example, flooding. It might not be raining in the community, but 100 kilometers away there's heavy rain. For example, if in the Sierra Madre area along Quirino or maybe Isabela, if it is raining hard, and then you have a river that connects that river to Antipolo and Rizal, okay, after a week or after 5 days, the water from the upland will go down into the lowland. So even if it did not rain in the lowland, you're going to have flooded. You're going to have flooding. And if you're not aware of that, because we are too microcosm in terms of our thinking and analysis, then we will be missing the point that there's a big hazard coming in. So while it is true that's community-based, there should be a larger perspective, particularly in hazard assessment. So, okay, this one is a little bit better. Determining how and the extent of emergency relief. Up to when are you going to give relief? 1 month, 3 months? In some communities, they're able to put up a grocery store because of the relief. Also, there's also a problem about, relief. The kind of goods given during relief are almost the same. And then when the people started selling it, the giver would feel very, very mad at the situation, and we look at look at those people. We give them relief and then they're selling it. Okay? And then the people would respond, how about you? Try eating sardines for 1 month. Okay? Try eating noodles for a month. See what will happen to you. So actually, what they're saying is that they have to sell some of their goods so that they'll be able to buy vegetables, so that they'll be able to have some money to pay for transportation. See? Yeah, and I think this is we have to understand what's happening in the community rather than just making judgment because we've given them something. Okay? Of course, there are some people who said, for example, this Mount Pinatubo joke, you know what? These people are giving us soap that do not cause bubbles. I've been using this soap for a long time, but it doesn't have. These are maybe an out of stock or maybe something like that. Then they look at the cover. Oh, it was cheese. Now, those actually happened. Those actually happened. Now, there's also a problem about maintaining an NGO and LGU collaboration. Before, there was a big, distance between the two, distrust and so on like that. But now, we're now working with the Office of the Civil Defense. There are now 4 members of the civil society are now members of the National Disaster Coordinating Council in the Philippines, and so NGOs are now partnering with them. We said that disaster risk management should be, should not be political. Okay, it should not be political in a sense that whatever your color is, you must. You must be able to collaborate, save lives and losses. Okay. Also, there's a problem about duplication and overlapping of functions of government and NGOs, and unhealthy competition in the delivery of services. That's why in the new law, packages should not have sources. The names of the politicians should not be there. It's going to be illegal. Okay. So if you see, for example, you donated relief goods to the government, and then suddenly you find your relief already with a name given by like this and like that politician, you can sue them. Because you just have to take pictures. And, well, it's better if you get pictures of the person doing it. Because they can say, oh, it was not me who put that. Okay? So, but it's already illegal. Then that's one way of, preventing corruption, making use of disaster as a venue, as a means by which politicians can corrupt. Okay? And then wars in conflict affecting the communities like what's happening now. So instead of NGO resources coming into actual development work, it goes to relief and emergency. NGO community do not have much money. They also depend on donor from Europe, from Japan, and from the USA. Although some NGOs now are doing consultancy work. Like our NGOs, the Disaster Preparedness, CDP, Disaster Preparedness, CDP. Center for Disaster Preparedness is one of the members of the council. We do not receive regular funding. No. You know what we do? We offer our services. So it's just a small NGO, but our project, we cater to JICA. Now we have project with UNESCO, ADPC, international projects. We provide the services, we get paid. They should pay us because we work for it. Yeah. And then, so instead of really just depending on donors, we provide services, and then that is the one that we use. Okay, so we subsidize communities. We give training, subsidize, but some other tasks we work for them. Okay, as of now, for example, our center is now working with the DILG for the implementation of the relocation of the 20,000 informal settlers. So we're part of it. Okay, as you always see that in the television. This is about the resettlement of 20,000 families along tributaries. Okay, because according to the, 3 meters away from the bank of the river should be open space. But now they are occupied by informal settlers, and many of these are actually in danger. Okay. But also there are problems, of course, because the resettlement areas where the people will be relocated are not yet ready. So we're also advocating that, if you're going to relocate, then the relocation area, the resettlement area should be ready, should be prepared, complete with electricity, with water supply, and all other facilities. So, well, there are also so many problems. I'm not going into the details of this. You can just look at this when you go home, maybe. You can have this. I have no problem with that. As long as I'm going to use it, you're going to acknowledge the source. And then we have there are significant impacts. I will not go into this. And then many impacts already based on studies, based on empirical evidences. Still impacts, okay? And then yeah. Contribution of CBDRM to sustainable development. Now, point for action, I came up with an acronym, number 1, letter D, and that is decreasing vulnerabilities of communities by increasing people's capacities. I've learned this in acrostic in elementary, and I just use it for my PhD. Okay. I is for integrating indigenous knowledge in responding to community disasters. S, systematizing the systems, procedures, and operations for community disaster risk management. Okay. Next, A, advocating and mobilizing resources for CBDRM. See, the lessons that we got in elementary are very basic. You can use that for higher level degrees. S, strengthening the interdisciplinary linkages in complementation. Okay, as I said, engineering, social science, biological science, they should all come together. T, translating national commitments into concrete plans in action. We have the law, very good. We have already the disaster management framework, very good. The problem is how do you translate that down below? So one of the mechanisms for institutionalizing it is through the disaster risk management offices. Before, we don't have. Now, because of the law, we have now Office for Disaster Risk Reduction Management. And then from that municipality, how do you translate that? How do you translate that below at the community level? So those are the challenges. Empowering the communities to enable them to influence decisions, policies, and programs concerning disaster risk. That's why we have advocacy. R is reorienting the perspectives on disaster response from being palliative and reactive to being preventive and aggressive. S is synthesizing experiences and learning towards improving theory and practice in CBDRM. So we encourage, if you are an NGO, that let's practice and let's write, okay, and document so that others may learn as well. I think that's the last slide. So thank you very much.